not a lot of work. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning here at City Hall. My name is Julia Osterman, and I'm the Chief Communications Officer for the City of Toronto. Thank you for joining us to discuss the Thorncliffe Park incident. As we get going today, and there are quite a few of you, out of respect for all of our media partners, I'm going to ask that when you ask questions at the end, you state your name and the outlet you're from, and we're going to do one question as we go, making sure that everyone can get as many questions as we can, hopefully, and there will be a mic available for you. But to start right now, I'd like to introduce the two speakers for today. We will have Toronto Fire Chief Jim Jessup. He'll be joining us first, followed by the Interim Chief Building Officer, Kamal Gagna, and then we'll open up for questions. Thank you so much for joining us. Chief.
Thank you, Julia, and forgive my voice this morning. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. I would like to begin by acknowledging how difficult this has been for every resident affected by this fire. Being displaced from their homes, living with uncertainty, and waiting for answers is incredibly challenging. Last night, Toronto Fire Services, Toronto Building, and Toronto Emergency Management held a town hall with residents from both 11 Thorncliffe Park Drive and 21 Overley Boulevard to provide them with an update on firefighting suppression operations. This fire incident has presented challenges that are unprecedented. Unlike a typical fire, this incident involves smoldering combustible insulation materials located in an area between two buildings that has been extremely difficult to access, and because the fire was not visible in the traditional sense, this required a very different approach for suppression and risk mitigation. This incident could not have been resolved using traditional suppression methods. Our firefighters applied multiple, innovative, and carefully coordinated approaches to safely bring the situation under control. I want to recognize the extraordinary efforts of my firefighters who, for the past 2.5 weeks, have worked around the clock in challenging conditions. Their persistence, ingenuity, and professionalism drove steady progress, even when that progress was not always visible. Through their continued dedication and problem solving, all suppression objectives have now been achieved. The fire has been fully extinguished. Throughout the response, our multidisciplinary team of suppression firefighters and engineers employed several suppression methods, each contributing to the reduction of heat, smoke, and carbon monoxide levels while limiting further risk. Following the fire suppression efforts, continuous monitoring of carbon monoxide, visible smoke conditions, thermal readings, and indoor air quality monitoring in surrounding residential units and the immediate neighborhood was systematically carried out. As a next step, Toronto Fire Services will hand the properties back to the property management companies. They will be informed of their required next steps regarding structural integrity of the buildings, the necessary remediation, and verification that all fire and life safety systems are functional. Our colleagues at Toronto Building will provide oversight for this process and building reoccupancy. The investigation into the origin, cause, and circumstances of the fire continues with the Toronto Fire Service Investigations Division and the Toronto Police Service. As that process moves forward, we're not able to provide details, and we appreciate everyone's understanding of the importance of protecting the integrity of the investigation. While firefighting suppression operations are complete, Toronto Fire Services will maintain a presence at the property as we continue to support the ongoing efforts to prepare the site for reoccupancy, including the restoration of fire and life safety systems. Throughout this response, our top priority has been the safety of residents. Again, we recognize how difficult this situation has been, especially the time away from their homes. We sincerely appreciate their patience, resilience, and cooperation shown by the residents and the community, and we thank them for their continued trust as the work towards the shared goal of safely returning them safely to their homes continues. I will now invite Interim Chief Building Official Kamal Gogna to the podium to provide an update on the next stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Jessup. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kamal Gogna. I'm the Interim Chief Building Official and Executive Director for Toronto Building. Over the past 17 days, our staff have been working closely with Toronto Fire Services, along with a third-party engineer retained by Thorncliffe Park condos property management companies to conduct preliminary assessments. Now that the firefighting operations have been concluded, you'll have to excuse me. I'll restart my remarks. Thank you, Chief Jessup. My name is Kamal Gogna. I'm the Interim Chief Building Official and Executive Director for Toronto Building. Over the past 17 years, my staff have been working closely with Toronto Fire Services, along with third-party engineers hired by Thorncliffe Park condos property management companies to conduct preliminary assessments. Now that fire operations have concluded, the buildings are being turned over back to the property management companies who are responsible for hiring third-party engineers to conduct a full assessment of the building to determine when and how individual units can safely be occupied. However, I must state that there still is a great deal of work required to make the buildings safe for reoccupancy. Any materials compromised by fire and prolonged water exposure, including the fiberboard between the two buildings, will need to be assessed by the professional engineers. Environmental remediation, including but not limited to smoke odor removal, moisture mitigation, and confirmation of acceptable indoor air quality must be completed prior to reoccupancy. The engineers will also check the fire alarm systems, electrical systems, air quality, as well as plumbing and electrical systems. We expect damage in the units to vary substantially, and that is why not all units will be ready for occupancy at the same time. Once the engineers complete their full assessment of the building, they will prepare a report outlining what is safe, what requires repairs, and where more work is necessary. The city will then review those reports to confirm that all safety checks have been conducted, and once found acceptable, will provide clearance to the property management companies. Residents will then receive updates directly from their property management companies on when they can expect to return to their units following that report. Our focus is to make sure that when residents return, they return to their homes that are safe to live in. Thank you. Over to Judy.
Thank you so much, Chief Jessup and Kamal. We're now open for questions. If we could, as I said, if we could please start with one question each, and just ensure that everybody has a chance to ask the question. Thank you so much.
Dilshad Burman, City News. Chief Jessup, you mentioned that a number of different kinds of firefighting methods were used to put out the fire. Could you elaborate what exactly was done to finally get this fire out?
No, happy to. As I said, this city has never had a fire this complex. We have never deployed a team of multidisciplinary engineers in a separate command post to come up with new ideas to extinguish a fire that we could not see. And so we used a combination originally of traditional firefighting methods of just plain water. That led to using inert gases such as carbon dioxide to displace the oxygen. Then we used helium to displace the oxygen. And then we finally used water-based foam at a very, very high volume over several hours, over several applications, which finally allowed us to reach the conclusion that the smoldering has finally extinguished. So it really was a combination of all activities that led to the final successful resolution of this incident.
Good morning, Courtney Hills with CP24. My question's also for you, Chief. Can you give us a sense of the damage to some of the units? You spoke to how challenging this fire was. I think at one point your crews were cutting into the walls to access the flames. Will there be units people cannot return to because of the damage?
Yeah, so we're going to be completely honest. Part of the reason we've been able to declare this fire extinguished and start the next phase of getting people back into their homes is we needed certainty to know that the fire had stopped and not spread. And following the work of the removal of the exterior brick veneer yesterday, as well as destructive and intrusive testing inside units adjoining the wall where the combustible material is, was required for us to have certainty to declare this fire out. So there are absolutely units that adjoin this wall where we have cut into the walls, where we have drilled holes into the walls so we could deploy our Hussar cameras and search out the edges of the fire and the fiberboard to know exactly the path of travel and where the fire stopped. So there are certainly going to be units with substantial damage. That was required to make sure that we could now safely move forward to the next phase to get people back in when it is safe to do so.
Hi there, Jaden Lee Lincoln, Global News. Either one of you could probably take this question. Do we have a time frame of the earliest time possibly that residents might be able to return to their homes?
As I mentioned in my remarks, and thank you for the question, property management companies are now responsible for retaining those third-party engineers to conduct a full assessment of the building. Once that assessment is complete, we will review that. In terms of timelines, it's difficult for me to actually provide a definitive timeline because it depends on what the findings of those engineers is going to be. However, what I can commit to is that once those reports are received, the city will commit to reviewing those reports within 24 hours to 48 hours and to provide a response with respect to the acceptability of those reports.
So it's safe to say most residents won't be returning to home during the holidays? I
cannot definitively say that one way or the other. It will depend on the findings of those engineers.
Megan Fitzpatrick from CBC News. Can you just update us then on the assistance that's being provided to residents? Up until now, have they still been in hotels, costs paid by the Red Cross and the neighborhood organizations and the city? Will that support continue or until they can get back into their units?
Very grateful to have Executive Director of the Toronto Emergency Management here is able to help assist us with that question. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Yes, the question was asking for an update on where the residents have been staying to now. When the fire first started, they were being provided hotels for a couple of days. I'm not sure when that ran out or did it. Are they still in hotels being paid for by the Red Cross, the city, neighborhood organizations, or did that already end? if they are still in hotels, will those costs continue to be covered for those people until they can get back into their units?
So how this was dealt is all the residents were dealt by case-by-case basis. Our emergency social services policy allows for accommodation up to 14 days. And again, it's assessed by, the people are assessed by a low income after tax assessment. And if they don't meet those areas, they have to rely on their insurance. And that was one of the biggest things that we had told them right from the get-go. Please call your insurance, work with your insurance, understand your insurance. But then there were also people that did meet that criteria and are still being supported by the city and by Red Cross.
Okay, so just so I understand, and that will continue on a case-by-case basis? Is that what you're
Correct.
saying?
Our other divisions are helping us with that. The ones that are more, that's more their expertise. And again, it's case by case. Some people will stay longer than others. It's some people will be able to find some accommodation through friends and family. Others will have to support for longer. Oh, Joanna Bevan, BEA-VEN, Executive Director, Toronto Emergency Management.
Are you aware of any residents that don't have insurance?
Yes, there are some that don't have insurance, correct.
Any other questions?
Can I ask another one?
Yes, please.
Just so we're clear, there's still no timeline then for when people can return to their units, given the assessments that need to be done, the remediation. There's still no date here.
What I can say is the city is working around the clock in terms of working with third-party engineers to require those assessments to be completed as expedient, as quickly as possible. And once those reports are received, we're committing to reviewing those within 24 hours to 48 hours. In terms of a timeline, those reports will outline what the timeline looks like. We expect, damages within the building to vary from unit to unit. So there may be units that are ready for occupancy sooner than others, but we really need to wait for those engineering assessments to be completed, which will outline the time frame for occupancy. And that's something that will be communicated to residents through the management companies.
Are you able to say how long the engineering reports then could take?
It's too early to say.
So still no timeline?
Still too early to say.
You were describing this fire as unprecedented, and I think you said the most challenging one the city has ever faced, which is quite a statement. Can you maybe describe what lessons have been learned from this experience? Is this something that's going to be taught now in firefighting school? Maybe other jurisdictions can learn from what's happened here?
Oh, thank you. So Toronto Fire Service certainly will be doing, as we do with all complex incidents, an after-action review and report. There are absolutely lessons to be learned from this. I've had phone calls from fire chiefs from across North America that have never experienced something as complex as this, especially given the fact that we could not see the fire. We now know the path of travel through all of the work our teams have done to trace it. But that was the biggest challenge. So there are absolute lessons to be learned. We will be conducting an after-action review of all of the work done, all of the techniques tried, what worked, what didn't work, and then, of course, the investigation into the origin, cause, and circumstances of this fire continues, and there is no doubt there could be lessons learned from that as well. So it is certainly something that I think will be of great interest to a number of metro-sized fire services across North America, given the challenges that it posed ours.
Given were there ever any flames? I'm wondering how the fire was detected in the first place if you couldn't see it. How did anyone know that a fire was going on?
Again, so the investigation into the origin, cause, and circumstances has commenced. That will form part of the investigation, and unfortunately, to maintain the integrity of the investigation, being led by Toronto Fire Service and the Toronto Police, I can't comment on anything regarding it.
Is it unusual that the Toronto Police are involved in this investigation, or is that?
No, it's very normal, to be very honest. Until criminality is ruled out by the police, it is actually normal practice.
Just one really quick one. You mentioned the combustible material. You showed us a sample a little while ago. Is that something that's commonly used, and is that something that it will now be looked at as something that needs to be, never used again in terms of building materials?
I think I'm going to turn that over to Kamal, please.
Thank you for that question. That material or similar materials have been around in the construction industry since the 1940s. With respect to the use in this building, that review is still ongoing, and we'll be able to comment on that once the assessments are completed.
Is it generally considered a safe material to use, though, in terms of this there's nothing untoward about using this material?
The material, like I said, has been used in the construction industry since the 1940s, and it's typically used for concrete formwork, and it is regularly used. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for your interest and for your accuracy in reporting. Have a lovely day. Thank you.